Okay. Hey, we're live. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 129 of the Security Podcast on the In30 Network. I'm Chaim here. We're back again with our lower thirds. Anyway, we have Tom here. Tom read through the very, very long VeraCrypt audit, and he's sort of shaking his head, but it looks like things are looking up.
Yes. And I have to say, I didn't read and study through the entire audit. I got the cliff notes. I read some comments. I listened to a few podcasts. I've got a pretty good idea of what's in this, but I am not an expert on software cryptography or cryptography software. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Well, you know way more than I do. So, I mean, you can tell me that it's the greatest thing ever, and I would probably use it, but...
Yeah, I can go ahead and, give the bottom line up front, which is, TrueCrypt back in the day took years and years and years to get an audit, to get someone professional, a team of people looking at their source code saying, here are the issues we found, here's the things to fix. And then have the information released publicly. And they didn't even fix everything in the audit. VeraCrypt hasn't been around for nearly as long as TrueCrypt. They've already got an audit out there, and they're already working through this list of bugs. The biggest issues are already fixed. It's already, the new version's already out there that takes care of a lot of this stuff, and they're actively working through the other bugs that were lower priority now.
Well, let's before we get there, let's give some history. Let's first start off with TrueCrypt was the first. They were full disk encryption. They were the standard. The only knock on them is that there was no audit, so people paid money. And I think they did some sort of crowdfunding site. They got Matthew Green of Johns Hopkins to do the audit. And halfway through the audit, well, they did two parts. But the first half of the audit, they found very little to really complain about. Nothing security-wise. I mean, just some poor formatting. They used 4 spaces instead of a tab, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, TrueCrypt left, and we talked about that on the episode where it happened. They released this new thing. We still don't know why they left. We speculated. We did all this. Go listen to that. But then they did the second part of the audit after. And again, they didn't find much. They found some weird ways of doing things, but I mean, obviously it wasn't fixed. So VeraCrypt came along, took the open source parts of TrueCrypt and became VeraCrypt. So that's where we're at. So I guess people still want to know how good is VeraCrypt, because those diehard curmudgeons are still using the TrueCrypt N-1 version. And we really should get people onto a different service right now. And VeraCrypt looks like it's the winner.
Yeah, I completely agree. So VeraCrypt really picks up the slack where TrueCrypt left off. It definitely fills the void, and it will work exactly the same way that TrueCrypt does, with a little bit of tweaks here and there that don't make the software any harder to use. So VeraCrypt has a lot of nice fixes for developers. You no longer have to pull down some ancient weird tool sets and libraries to compile TrueCrypt. VeraCrypt is relatively easy to build if you want to compile it yourself, if you don't trust binaries. That's a great thing. It also means it's easier to hack on. It's going to be, not hack on as in, break stuff, but hack on as in fix bugs, add features, that sort of thing. It's easier for programmers and other open source people to get into the mix, because it's just way easier to get an environment set up around it where you can build things. And on top of that, VeraCrypt actually updated some of the encryption. They're using a different form of AES than TrueCrypt was by default. And it's really fantastic. It works exactly the same way, except it's a little bit safer with some nice bug fixes to boot.
So, I mean, I've never installed VeraCrypt. I mean, I hear whatever. I've installed TrueCrypt before it went full disk encryption. I said, this is great, but I'm never going to use it. And so my question to you is not necessarily VeraCrypt, but do we need this over BitLocker or whatever the Apple version is, File Vault, or whatever Linux uses? do we really need this, or can we use the one standard inside our operating system? And I know what your answer is going to be. If you want to make sure there's no backdoors or anything, use this. But I'm asking you again, do we really need this?
Well, it really depends. So for full disk encryption, let's compare it, first against BitLocker. Well, it's Microsoft owned. You can't guarantee, right? The software is not completely, or it's not open source. We don't know exactly the inner workings of BitLocker, right? We've got security white papers, we've got Microsoft's word to go on, but they don't ship us the code, right? We can't tear it apart and audit it ourselves. So if you're looking to evade state actors, if you're looking to dodge the NSA or the FBI, you probably shouldn't use BitLocker. Now, if you're an on-the-go business person and you're trying to protect company financial data from some guy who might, steal your laptop when you walk off to get a cup of coffee and you totally left your bag laying there, yes, BitLocker is just fine for that use case. Same thing with FileVault, right? FileVault might be a little more trustworthy because Apple does have now a nice history of fighting the government on requests it deems, unworthy. But as far as comparing the full disk encryption of TrueCrypt to something like Lux for Linux, I would kind of put them on the same level as far as full disk encryption goes, right? Both are going to be open source. Both have been bashed on and attacked by the community at large for years and years now. We know that they're rock solid and they work really, really well. It's hard to get that stuff wrong after you've bashed on it for so long. But the key part about VeraCrypt, the key reason you would use it is encrypted containers. So let's say you want to take an encrypted vault, an encrypted file system, throw a bunch of files in there and ship it off to someone else. But you're on a Mac. You can't exactly FileVault encrypt a locker and hand it to someone on Windows and expect them to use it. You need something that's going to work cross-platform. VeraCrypt, just like TrueCrypt did, fits that void perfectly. Linux, Mac, Windows, whatever. You create a FileVault, make sure it's formatted as FAT32 or NTFS, something that everything can read, and you're done. So it's really the interoperability. That's where its main strength comes in.
So, I mean, I'm going through the screenshots that I see, and you're right. It's almost identical to TrueCrypt. It's still not pretty, but it's there. It's okay. And I think what you said, that last part, is so your thing is encrypted, your hard drive is encrypted, your buddy's hard drive is encrypted. You need to send them something. It's probably the easiest way to probably do it. It used to be using was it 7-zip encryption, which is just like
I'm not going to knock 7-zip encryption. I love 7-zip encryption. It's AES all the way.
I mean, that's how we did it before. Here's a great idea. And putting it this way, giving them the password, giving them the options, and they'll be able to figure this out. And yes, it's if you want to make sure that no one can absolutely do this, then VeraCrypt's the way to go. But if you're just starting out and you're concerned about encryption and you're hearing the stuff on the news, I would say, you know what, turn on BitLocker, turn on FireVault until you get comfortable using this, and don't encrypt your whole hard drive, even though they do have steps to really make sure that you don't really totally screw it up. But there's always a way. And then if you want to try with the encrypted lockers and the encrypted lockers, and do that, play with it, and go from there.
And then, on top of that, and these have kind of fallen out of favor now that web apps are so prevalent and awesome, but I used to run on a USB stick when I used public computers a lot in college. I used to run portable apps, which was this little launcher. You can put it on a USB stick and throw all your apps in there, like Thunderbird, Firefox. I had a bunch of development tools in there, but I didn't want someone... I didn't want to lose my USB stick and have someone grab my Firefox with, all of my web history and, if I'd saved passwords in the browser and all this stuff. It contained a lot of personal data I didn't want falling into the wrong hands. But I needed to be able to use those files to get at my documents, at the very least, on any operating system, on any machine I would use through that USB stick. So I put TrueCrypt at the time in portable version on an unencrypted partition, and then I had a vault file sitting there. And without my passphrase, no one could get into my portable apps.
So, again, it's one of those. It's one of those. What do you need from the software? If you're trying to encrypt it and you don't want local law enforcement, things like that, and you're sort of trusting, then use was a BitLocker and FileVault. If you want to make sure no one can get into it and you're willing to do the extra work and the safeguards and you understand the risks and you know there's not going to be any support for you, let's go with VeraCrypt and let's move on from there.
Yeah, I do want to stress that, while there are vulnerabilities that were found in VeraCrypt, right? And these aren't like groundbreaking, the world is ending sort of encryption vulnerabilities, but while these bugs were found, the fact remains is that they were found, right? There was money paid to have this stuff searched out, found, had reports written about it, and then had the bugs fixed, right? They put forth the work. We shouldn't demonize VeraCrypt because they had bugs. We should be applauding them because they put forth the effort to find and then fix them.
So, and again, with all these, we're seeing that encryption is becoming more and more not popular, but we need more and more. Even normal people are starting to question, is this safe? Is this secure? Why are things leaking out? I mean, I'm sure the DNC right now is very mad they didn't start with PGP keys in the beginning. But even normal people are saying, do we need this? How do we prevent this? And it's always good to point to something that say, hey, look, this is open source. They banged on it. It's been audited. All this other stuff. We think it's good. So I want to move on to VPNs next, unless Tom has a different story he wants to squeeze in beforehand.
No, VPNs work great.
So again, another topic on VPNs, which ones we should use and everything else. And Tom and I have always said it depends on what you want. If you want better Netflix, it doesn't really matter which service you're using as long as you're connecting from somewhere else. And what I will say before we really start getting into the topic, if you're using a Nexus device, so for me it's a Nexus 6P, one of the Project Fi features that they ported over was this idea of if you connect to a known open Wi-Fi hotspot, Google will insert their own VPN to make sure you're safe, not from Google spying on you, but from the people, the people at that location, to make sure they're not man in the middling you. You're connected to Google. Google does all the things it needs to do. It serves you the page. And the idea there is that you're trusting Google versus just trusting the open wild west that is the airport or a diner or anything else. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's a fantastic feature.
Because for the most part, again, we talk about what are you trying to do? You're at the coffee shop, you're just trying to access your email, and you don't want other people snooping on your traffic. I mean, Google already has everything about you anyway, but we're not hiding from Google. We're just saying we don't want the other people, because yes, Google we don't know what Google's doing with that information. They're sniffing it, they're storing it, whatever they're doing. But most likely they're trying to they understand that open Wi-Fi is bad. They're trying to be secure about it. So they're probably not doing anything bad. With that said, I wouldn't do anything illegal anyway on it or do things you shouldn't be doing. But at least if you're just trying to check your email or pay your bank account, your credit card, you have a lot less to worry about than anything else. Now, if you're doing something maybe you shouldn't be doing, then you would need a full-on VPN.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, depending on the level of illegality, you might go ahead and say, yeah, VPN is probably still not safe enough for me, and go full-on Tor.
So, well, I mean, we always have that question, do VPN first or do Tor first, or what should you be doing? But again, a lot of people are asking about what VPNs are and how to use them or how to protect themselves. And all these people are just saying, hey, you know what? I'm just trying to be a little more safe on the internet, or I want to get around a region lock or something like that. And we tell them, and look, we've all said you can either roll your own, which I actually really like to do. It's not that hard. It's going to cost you $35 for a Raspberry Pi, or if you have an old computer, or you can do a PF Sense router on an old computer. These things are cheap, and the key there is that your home ISP becomes the VPN. So when you're out on the road, what you're doing is you're connecting to your home, and your home is then passing on the traffic. which for me is good enough. I think Tom also is in agreement that it's probably good enough.
Yeah, if all you're looking to do is kind of use public Wi-Fi in a safe way, connecting to your house and then going out your standard ISP connection at home is plenty of protection. Now, if you don't trust your ISP, right? Because my ISP in particular has been known to throttle certain websites like YouTube in particular, and that's annoying. I'm done trusting them. So what I do is I use a paid for VPN service, and I throw as much traffic as I can into that VPN. It all depends on who you're trusting. If you trust your ISP, if you have no issues with handing your traffic to your ISP, if you're not, using Tor and VPN daily, then you have no reason to go above and beyond that. If you want to roll your own, VPN device at home, it's great, it's easy, and it's really fast in most cases. But if you don't trust your ISP, try to research, companies that you do trust. And that's one of the great things about security being so popular right now, or being such a hit marketing feature, is that there are tons of VPN companies to choose from, and we are going to plug the site privacytools.io. So if you're looking for a new VPN provider, go pick one of those from that list. They are great.
I think the problem most people have is that the monthly subscription cost. I think that's what's a big bottleneck. People are willing to give up the security because they don't want to pay whatever it is, $50 a year. And that's why I also suggest it's a good tool. It's a good father-son, father-daughter, mother-daughter, mother-son, parental unit, child unit activity to build the VPN, to talk about the security. And it really isn't that hard. It's absolutely not that hard at all. And there's great forums for it. I'm here. I did it. I can lead you to it if you have questions, and you can go from there. And then you can give each person a client certificate. You can explain to them how they use it. You'll be the cool one at the water cooler, assuming people care. But from there, if you want more than that, then you're going to have to go out and pay. And they're not that expensive, $50, $60 a year. But still, it's one of those things that you have to do. And I think a lot of people are just resenting paying another subscription.
Yeah, and it does have a cost. And we will warn, do not, please, under any circumstances, use a free VPN service that has badness written all over it. So just stay away. And that's... Tor is not a VPN. Tor is its own beast, and yes, it's free. So if you need something above and beyond, and the most paranoid levels of security, you can use Tor.
And again, you don't want to. And if you're going that route that you're trying to hide, so I connect to my house because Verizon already knows everything about me. I'm not hiding stuff. I'm hiding from school. I'm hiding from work, so work doesn't see me doing something that they don't necessarily agree with. Or I'm at the coffee shop and I'm hiding and everything else. And for the most part, I've been using the Google VPN, because what am I doing on the VPN? I'm Googling stuff. So they already have that. And when I connect home, things like that. If I'm trying to be really, really sneaky and I don't want people to know my location or anything else, yes, I did purchase something. But what happens if you're actually trying, like we said, with VeraCrypt or TrueCrypt versus your home, your built-in operating system? You have to go outside the US. So we said privacy tools. They explain why. They say you really want to go outside the US. The only problem is, and here's where we can get into a little bit of an argument, is we think that the NSA and all the other nation states know where these endpoints are. So somebody said, let me pay $50 for this VPN service. Let's see what IP address is. And now they're watching that. So that VPN may not log anything, but they're still taking a look at it and seeing what traffic comes out. And we don't know their capabilities at that point.
Right. And, if you are a person trying to actively evade the NSA, you're probably listening to the wrong show. Nothing we say here, if you are targeted by the NSA, like if they have you personally on their radar saying, hey, Bob Boberson over there, we think he's got, suspected terrorist ties. We're going to go tap his house and watch what he does for the next couple of years. You can take all the security precautions in the world until you make massive life changes that may or may not include leaving the country and going into hiding like some sort of cool spy novel. You will not evade a nation state actor. Happen if you are targeted, they will get you. You can now, one of the reasons that I use a VPN is because I think mass surveillance is horrible. It's awful. It's a violation of our most basic human rights. So the NSA has been known to collect all encrypted traffic and to store all that and to save it for offline cracking later. And by me encrypting stupid stuff like my video game traffic or me watching gaming shows on YouTube, I'm making the NSA's job just a little bit more expensive, and that gives me warm fuzzies inside.
Again, we say this all the time, and I say it to everyone. You can't say I need security at a moment's notice. You have to buy into it. That's why we tell people. All the messaging platforms just recently released encryption. So WhatsApp has it, use it. I mean, and we can argue whether it's okay or not, but it's the same idea. If you're being targeted by the NSA, it's really hard to evade them unless you're absolutely perfect. Google's Allo, which we're not really keen on, but the idea is still there. They have encryption if you're doing that. Facebook put it on, and it's not the best implementation, but I do like it if you're on your phone. And there's always Signal. So you start with that, start having your communication there, start not emailing your passwords to people, start using a password manager and changing it, start doing all the things that we've been talking about. And that will make your life a lot easier for when you decide to say, I'm ready to take that next step. And do we want to talk about voting?
I was thinking voting next. I think, given the time frame, this can be the most pertinent issue.
So we're recording this. It's 8:45 Eastern on. That's 15 minutes before the last live debate, if that's what you want to call it, a debate, or more of a screaming match, a dumpster fire, some people call it, a drinking game. And every year we hear about this around this time. Why can't we have online voting? And the really short answer is that we cannot secure it. There's no way.
Yeah, no, there's simply no way. Now that being said, I'm not trying to dissuade research in this area. I absolutely think it is something that cryptographers and academics and Bruce Schneier, and we can take the best minds in computing and probably eventually over the course of several years, maybe even a couple decades, figure out a good way to do online voting in a theoretical sense. But today, and probably for the foreseeable future, voting online, voting anything connected to the internet or even a network is ridiculous. It is infeasible. Right? The best security on the planet always has flaws. And as we've seen with many government systems, a lot of these things are built by the lowest bidder with the highest promises. The election, if you can compromise the voting process, if you can hack it and bend it to your will even slightly, you have caused irreparable damage, right? Not only to America, but to American politics, to American democracy, to people's faith in the election process, which, I mean, granted, it's kind of happened this year already, but that's besides the point. There's just not any way to do it safely right now.
I mean, we spoke about, I don't know if we've ever spoken about this, but the one of the most secure ways to send communication is just through the postal service, because it is federal law to tamper with that. And I don't know about anybody else, but my state, New Jersey, allows absentee ballots and you don't have to provide a reason. I've been voting absentee for, I don't know, 5 years now for a whole bunch of different reasons, but I feel like that is going to be the most secure way I can vote. Now, we can question whether they actually count the vote, but you know what? They send it to my house. I have time to read. I have time to understand the questions. I have time to submit my response. It gets mailed, and I haven't had too many problems with the mail, but at least you can say, here's a system in place that has federal protections. And yes, you can, and it has randomness. It has all these other things. And yes, you can rob the county election place. But if that happens, you have bigger problems.
Right. For as technologically apt, and it's for, I love computers, I love networking, I love the internet, I love encryption and really complicated crypto systems and stuff. And my favorite way of voting is on a paper ballot. I love paper ballots. I love, filling in the circles and folding that thing and throwing it in the ballot box. And I truly believe it is the most secure way we have to vote today, right? You could theoretically stuff a ballot box, right? And people, we only have to look at, when was that? It was the first, Bush Jr.
W versus Gore in 2000 in Florida with the hanging chads,
which was a complete mess. But, that was really the first time we've seen any major, I wouldn't even call it a catastrophe, but questions when it came to paper ballots. And we haven't had that issue since. The internet is a wild, wild place, and it's not, constrained to just America, right? If you put the American election online, literally the entire world is going to be trying to get at it.
And again, they have time to get at it because the system of trying to get everyone to vote online. And then I hear, well, we can do it in both ways. No, that's not going to work. You want more people to vote, make it easier to vote, have more to have early voting, have, late voting, make the barrier to entry really easy. Don't change the technology. It's like I said, I vote absentee. If I think absentee is the way to go, and as long as they don't store it next to the post office where someone can steal it, I'm pretty good. I haven't heard too many post offices being robbed lately, or county headquarters or anything like that.
Yeah, and if there was, it would hit the news instantaneously, and the federal government would come down with the fury of 1,000 suns to try to find and prosecute whoever was messing with. And
you can't. And yes, and the good part is you can't stuff for a positive candidate. So if you rob anything like that, you don't know who you're robbing from. I guess you can know demographics if this is a highly Republican or Democratic area, but still, you're taking the votes from the other candidate as well. Anyway. So it's a difficult problem. It's a very difficult problem, and it's not just that we can count it, because computers can count. It's the verification, right? Because how could you tell, right? Just try to think about this problem. Can you really tell if data's been tampered with? How can you tell if data's been tampered with? How can you prove that something is the original verifiable only copy of that data across any number of systems, right? It's almost impossible. We're just now starting to toy with the idea that might be even possible in computer science with the idea of a blockchain, but that's still highly experimental at this point. Sure, it's working great for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, but for other applications, it's still incredibly theoretical at this point. Using it, as kind of a backing for a major election, I don't see that happening for the next decade or two. That said, technology moves fast. I want to put out this quote by Jim Gray, and we'll link this in the show notes. He said this on Twitter, which is, I think, probably the best way to put this problem. It's not enough for a voting system to be trustworthy. It has to be conspicuously trustworthy to the non-expert observer. So you have to be able to convince the most non-technical person
that the computers somehow didn't rig the election. That is the hardest problem.
And remember, we can't get people to agree that there's no voter fraud. Voter fraud is apparently a big issue. When we can't find confirmed cases, we just hear about them, and on whatever side you're on that, it's now you're going to make this online where you have anonymous people voting and everything else. So it's going to be a while, and I hope it's a while before we get online voting. Now, if we do get online voting and it's good, then I'm all for it because it makes my life a lot easier.
Well, with the way American politics are going, I'm thinking in the next decade, we'll see the elections go from where they're currently at to America Online style, text your vote now. And then we're going to have sing-offs between the candidates. No more debates. We're going to have full-on talent shows.
So anyway, with that said, we're going to wrap up. Just 2 quick administrative notes. 1, WhatsApp has a link, so you don't have to give us your phone number and do this Synac packet type thing. And 2, we're putting a Bitcoin address there if you would like to throw us some fractions. I mean, Bitcoins are great, but fractions of a Bitcoin, we're all about that as well. So anyway, everyone, we will probably see you next week.
See you, everyone.
Bye. And then stop.